My name is Victoria. I'm 42, and the last memory my relatives had of me was a washed-up community college dropout with a supposed drug habit, a lie they invented to explain why I stopped coming home. The irony wasn't lost on me as I tightened the straps on my bulletproof vest in the parking lot of the Riverside County Courthouse. After 23 years of silence, here I was about to walk into the biggest federal racketeering case in California's history, one that would dismantle everything my family built on deception, exploitation, and greed. For 3 years, I had been tracking the Moretti empire. Not because of blood ties, that part was just genetics I couldn't escape, but because the company had been laundering money for the Sinaloa cartel while abusing undocumented laborers as disposable tools. They threatened deportation whenever workers asked for safety gear or fair wages. 18 men and women had died in accidents that never should have happened. 18 families ripped apart so my Uncle Tony could buy another yacht. The sun dipped behind the courthouse as I flipped through my files one last time. Tomorrow, I would testify as the lead U.S. Marshal on Operation Bloodline, the investigation that brought the Moretti syndicate to its knees. Tomorrow, my family would finally learn the truth, that the failure with the made-up drug problem had actually been living undercover for 2 decades, dismantling trafficking rings, cartels, and terror cells. But tonight, I was still Vicky, the disappointment who supposedly couldn't handle responsibility. Flashback, 23 years earlier. Victoria's not cut out for this line of work. Uncle Tony's voice carried through the kitchen, sharp enough to cut me down where I sat hunched over my textbooks. I was 19, balancing 2 jobs, scraping through community college on 4 hours of sleep, pulling a 3.8 GPA. She's too soft, too emotional. Look at her. She can barely keep her eyes open. My mother nodded, writing another check for my cousin Marco, who had just flunked out of his second university, but was somehow still the family's chosen golden boy. Marco has leadership, she said. That's what law enforcement needs. Marco leaned back in his chair, beer in hand before dinner. Vicky's got that bleeding heart thing, always crying over some sob story. You can't do this job if you care too much. Exactly, Tony agreed. This family doesn't need weakness associated with our name. The weakness he referred to was my habit of asking why their construction sites had so many accidents, why workers vanished after injuries, why the ledgers I balanced over the summer never seemed to add up. I stopped asking after Tony warned me that tuition money could vanish just as easily as it appeared. Family loyalty, Victoria. That's what keeps us alive. What they didn't know was that I had already applied to every federal program I could find. DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshals. And though I'd been waitlisted, my investigation had already begun, in those messy books I'd been asked to balance. So, instead of staying, I vanished. 2 years later, the U.S. Marshals Academy in Georgia pushed me harder than I'd ever imagined. Firearms training, tactical maneuvers, legal code, psychological testing. 6 grueling months later, I graduated second in my class. My family thought I was in rehab. I let them believe it. Let them whisper stories about breakdowns and drugs. It was easier than explaining that I was working deep undercover. The truth? I was recruited precisely because of my family. Not in spite of them, but because of them. The Marshals had been monitoring Moretti construction for years. Workplace deaths, financial crimes, disappearing workers. They needed an insider. Someone the family trusted. Someone they underestimated. Someone like me. Back to present day, courthouse steps. The building buzzed with agents, reporters, and federal staff. In hours, the trial would begin. My FBI partner, Agent Martinez, approached with a tablet showing breaking coverage. The Moretti lawyers are already spinning this as government overreach, he warned. Expected, I said. That's their specialty. Pretend ignorance. Blame the system. And the relocated workers? Safe, I assured him. All 18 families have housing, protection, legal status in progress. Their kids are in school. They'll be okay. That was what mattered most. He gave me a steady look. You ready for this? Testifying against your own blood. They stopped being family the moment they placed bets on which worker would die next. I'd found those betting slips in Tony's safe. Wagers on human lives treated like an office game. Even now, the thought made my hands tremble with rage. The next morning, the federal courtroom. The place overflowed with press, defense attorneys, and agents. And in the back row, my family. After 23 years, there they were. Uncle Tony looked bloated and gray. Marco hadn't changed a bit, which made it worse. My mother sat between them, wearing that familiar mask of worried disapproval. They didn't recognize me. 2 decades of training had reshaped everything: my posture, my build, my expression. I was no longer their weary, fragile Victoria. I was Deputy U.S. Marshal Moretti. The prosecution calls Deputy U.S. Marshal Victoria Elena Moretti to the stand. The room went silent as I rose. My badge glinted at my hip, my uniform crisp, my bearing unmistakably federal. The bailiff swore me in while my family stared in disbelief. Marshal Moretti, the prosecutor began, state your position and years of service. Deputy U.S. Marshal, Los Angeles District. 21 years of service. 2 years prior with the DEA. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Behind me, I knew it was my mother choking back tears. And your relation to the defendants? Anthony Moretti is my uncle. Marco Moretti is my cousin. The Moretti Construction Company is my family's business. Or was. And why did the task force need you specifically? Because they needed someone the family would never suspect. And they never suspected me because they believed I was a drug addict who failed out of college 2 decades ago. The defense attorney tried his best. Isn't this really about revenge, Marshal Moretti? Years of resentment against your family. I met his gaze. Sir, revenge would have been faster and involved far less paperwork. I spent 23 years protecting the very people your clients exploited and killed. The courtroom broke into uneasy laughter. After testimony, in the hallway they were waiting. My mother reached me first, tears streaking her face. Victoria, we didn't know, we thought. You told people I was an addict for 23 years. I cut in. You let them think I was weak. A disgrace. We were told, she stammered. Tony shoved forward, red with fury. You destroyed us. Your own blood. You destroyed yourselves, I said. 18 dead. Families threatened with deportation. Betting pools on who would die next. That was you, not me. Marco tried his last angle. Vicky, come on. Family is family. We can work this out. It's Deputy U.S. Marshal Moretti. And no, we can't work this out. You're under indictment for racketeering and murder. Family ties don't erase that. My mother's voice cracked. But we love you. We always loved you. No. You loved the idea of me as a failure. The real me, the one who spent decades protecting strangers. You never wanted to know her. I turned to leave, but paused. For what it's worth, you were right about one thing. I was too soft for your kind of work. I couldn't live with 18 people's blood on my hands. 6 months later, sentencing. Tony got 25 to life. Marco, 15 years. The company was liquidated, the money redirected to victim compensation. The families rebuilt their lives. Their kids were thriving. They sent me a card every year. As for my relatives, letters came from prison. Tony raging, Marco wallowing, my mother apologizing. I never answered. Some betrayals cut too deep. The truth was simple. The real victory wasn't their prison terms or the compensation payouts. The real victory was walking out of that courthouse fully myself, someone who chose justice over blood, people over profit. My family had spent 23 years telling the world I wasn't strong enough for their world. They were right. I was stronger than that.